I'm going to go over the pros and cons of living in Des Moines. Stay tuned. Now, you're probably watching this video because you're trying to decide, is Des Moines right for me? What does it look like to move to Des Moines? How's it going to affect my family, my partner, my spouse, my kids? Why would I not want to move to Des Moines? So in this video, I'm going to go over 5 pros and 5 cons of living in Des Moines. I'm going to do the standard disclaimer. These are my opinion. These are not affiliated to anyone else. My name is Darson Grantham, and I'm a realtor with Keller Williams here in Des Moines. And on this channel, we go over all the things that you need to know about Des Moines. We go through all the suburb, all the communities, all of the bedroom communities, any parks, any events, festivals. We touch on all of that on this channel. So if any of that is interesting to you and you're looking at Des Moines and you're wanting to know, how do I explore Des Moines more? Subscribe to my channel and you will be fast-tracked to all those videos that I post. So please subscribe, ring that bell, let people know that you are enjoying the channel, and stay tuned. Let's go. My pro number 1 for living in Des Moines is the commute time. Now, I'm from small town Iowa. The commute time that in small town Iowa, when you had no traffic lights, was next to as fast as you can drive, the speed limit. But in Des Moines, right, it's a metropolitan. There are stoplights. There are other people driving places. So I had to get used to it. And it was a long time to drive 20 minutes when I grew up in southwest small town Iowa. But in Des Moines, 20 minutes gets you pretty much across the city. Now, if you're coming from your Chicago, your Denver, anywhere, California maybe, you probably have a commute that is more than 20 minutes. And when I say commute, not just to the grocery store, a commute everywhere you go, no matter what time. In Des Moines, there just isn't a commute. You don't have cars backed up on the freeway, very, very rarely. Now, if you're living in one of the suburbs and you're driving downtown at 8 in the morning, yeah, you're going to have some more traffic. It might take you a bit longer than if it was on a different time of day or at a different time of day. But you're just not going to have that commute time that you would in other cities in Des Moines. Now, Des Moines is growing. Now there's a lot of expansion in the northwest quadrant. And if you live up there in the Granger and the Grimes area and you're driving downtown, that's going to be a 35 to 40 minute drive. Same thing as if you're living in a little pocket over in Ankeny, in the southwest corner of Ankeny. To get downtown, there are no direct paths, and it's going to take just a little bit longer than 20 minutes. So just keep that in mind. But, if you are living anywhere in the Des Moines metro and you're driving downtown and you're driving out to West Des Moines, even Jordan Creek out on the western side of the city, you're not going to drive more than 20 minutes in most cases. And when it comes to drive time, as more growth and development happens outside of the metro into, our farmland outside of Des Moines, there are no natural barriers that Des Moines has that's going to stop the city from expanding. I know that there are other cities that will have mountains or a lake on one side or whatever, you name it, the ocean. And that limits the amount of building that a company or a person can do to expand a city. But in Des Moines, we have farmland as far as you can see to the north, to the west, to the east, to the south. We have farmland. So the growth, the expansion is going to keep going further and further out. So your commute, if you're buying out there, you have to pay attention to your commute. But I do got to say, the interstates, the crossroads, there is usually a very quick commute. Number 2 for living in Des Moines is the housing affordability. Housing affordability throughout the city. In the past videos that we've done, we've kind of went through the price ranges of each city and what that's going to cost you to live there, what size of house you're going to get. And one thing I love about Des Moines is that the price that you're going to pay in Waukee versus Des Moines proper versus Altoona, yes, that's going to change. But if you want a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,200 square foot, it is reasonably priced. You can get that. You can raise a family in any of the suburbs, any of the Des Moines proper, for under $250,000. Number 3 pro for living in Des Moines is the school systems. School systems. Now, as a realtor, we are not allowed to promote or say one school system is better than the other. And so, quite frankly, I don't know what you value in a school system. So if you value school systems, you need to do your own research. Now, I'm happy to share with you different websites and different statistics on what the best ranked school systems are and how they determine that ranking system. But in general, Iowa school systems are very good. According to niche.com, Iowa's Des Moines metro schools, 3 of them fall in the top 10 schools across Iowa. So across Des Moines, and those are Johnston, Ankeny, and Waukee. They're in the top 10 for school systems ranking by niche.com in Iowa. So if you're coming to the metro and you value the data that they provide, you can find housing of all sorts in all of those cities. Number 4 for living in Des Moines as a pro is just the general Iowa economy. Obviously, that is a very broad topic, but the general industry that Iowa has and the diversity that it brings and the political system that we have, it's been very pro-business. It's been very economy-driven. And typically, when you have pro-business, you have an economy that is doing maybe a little bit more status quo, a little bit more open to businesses' decisions. Specifically within the economy, we're kind of known as one of the largest insurance employers of the nation, maybe even the world. Some would call us the insurance capital of the world. We also have a very heavy banking system. So we have Principal Financial, we have Wells Fargo, we have a couple of those really big banking companies. We have Travelers Insurance, we have EMC Insurance. There's a lot of that banking and insurance feel, financial services, and which is funny because I always look at the real estate industry and the real estate ups and downs, and when you had that, and they are the companies that got hit really hard during the 08, 9, 10 crash. You think, well, did the city of Des Moines get hit pretty hard with that? And quite frankly, if you go look, I want to say it's about an 8% dip in housing prices. And when you compare that to other cities, like 8% on a situation where the economy basically was devastated for a few years, that's really a blip in the radar. And obviously we have recovered greatly since then. But I always look at Des Moines as it's never going to be the top. It's never going to be the bottom. It just keeps trucking along. Very status quo, rising in housing prices, rising in wages, all that very important stuff that has to do with the economy. So also, there's a big trend to build your technology company in Des Moines. Des Moines has done some great things for technology startups. We've had a handful of technology startups do really well. And so you do have that industry that is on the leading edge of technology and ag and how they kind of intermingle. So you'll see a lot of that in the Iowa economy also. Now, number 5 is your average wage compared to the price of housing. According to ZipRecruiter, your average wage in Des Moines, Iowa is $56,000 per person. So that puts your household income at around $112,000, right? So at $112,000, that's a very high percentage of folks that can buy a house and can afford a $250,000 house if they're able to save up the down payment, right? So when you consider $110,000 household income, you look at a $200,000 house, $250,000 house, and your house payment's going to be about $1,000, maybe $1,200, depending on what the interest rate is, right? So your $110,000 income with taxes, say it's closer to, say it's $6,000 a month, right? So if you look at that, the rule of thumb is that you don't spend more than 25% of your income on your mortgage payment. And if you do the math there, 25% of $6,000 is right around $1,500. So you're actually below that 25% if your mortgage is anywhere from that $1,000 to $1,200 range. So that is why the affordability within Des Moines in the surrounding suburbs is incredibly, I call it a huge pro, is when you're buying a house and you can afford it, you can provide that for your family. Now we're going to dig into the 5 cons of living in Des Moines. Now, some of these might overlap. Some of these might, touch on the pros, and I'll explain that later. But here we go. Number 1, mass transit is lacking in Des Moines. There is the mass transit system is called DART, Des Moines Area Regional Transport, and it can be done. I personally don't know anyone that only uses mass transit. It seems to be used typically for your lower income that don't have the ability to drive a car or don't have the ability to get a license to drive a car. The one thing about that is Des Moines has very good biking system, and so your ability to jump on a bike and get anywhere that you want to go is, I want to say it's next to none, because I'm sure there are better, but it's very good. You can bike pretty much anywhere throughout the city if you wanted to commute via bike and didn't want to use the mass transit. Now, it's not bad. The mass transit isn't bad. It's not like it's crime ridden or it's not clean. It seems to be a great, clean, efficient system. It just has not gotten any adoption throughout the city. And I think it's because, it goes back to the pro number 1, is commute time is 20 minutes to get most everywhere that you need to go. So when you have to use mass transit, you're going to be waiting and on someone else's time. Just people don't want to do it. And then number 2 for my con of Des Moines is the lack of sports, professional sports. Now we have some professional sports. We don't have any pro teams. We don't have any of the teams of the highest level. And I, growing up, played a lot of sports. And so when Des Moines doesn't have any pro baseball teams, no pro football teams, no pro basketball teams, no pro hockey, there's no professional major league sports teams. Now we have some AAA iCubs baseball team, which is the Chicago Cubs AAA team. We also have the Iowa Wild, which is the step-down league for the Minnesota Wild. Those are 2 professional options that you have, but they're still not top tier, top level. So the lack of professional sports. Number 3 con for living in Des Moines, the airport. Now, I think some people would argue that this is a plus, that the airport is small. The con is there's not very many direct flights. Now, if you fly a lot, you're going to get annoyed. You're going to go to Chicago a lot. You're going to go to Dallas a lot. You're going to go to Atlanta, Georgia a lot. So the plane international airport, and it is an international airport, but just has does not have very many direct flights. So I would call that as a bad thing. If you are moving here to work remote and you are planning to fly places throughout the week, I would, I don't want to talk you out of it. Just know you're going to have a lot of connecting flights. Number 4 for cons in Iowa, and that's going to be no mountains. Not very good hiking. Yes, we have Ledges State Park, which is up in north of Des Moines, up by Ames, Iowa. Yes, there are some hiking spots. But if you came from a place who had like actual mountains, the hiking is poor. Just is. There's no beating around the bush. And you can't really drive anywhere within 3 hours that's going to get you to a mountain. Maybe even more than that. Now, we can find other things to do. Your hiking might not be as much elevation, but we have a lot of gravel roads out in the country. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, we do, but you don't have to use those. But if you want to hike, you're going to have to travel. And that kind of goes the same. We have some kayaking, some rivers, but really, if you're a big kayaker and you're used to the mountain rivers, you're just not going to, you're going to be disappointed. And then 5, which is the one that everyone loves to dog on. It's actually one of my pros. I love it. Winter. Iowa's winters suck. Yes, they could be worse. We could be in Minnesota. They're much worse. But compared to your Missouri, compared to your Alabama, anywhere south of us, of Iowa and Des Moines, it's warmer there. Iowa's cold. Now, it's not cold for that long. So and I say cold, you don't have your sub-zero temps much more than your December, January, February. So 3 months out of a 12-month year, you're going to have some sub-zero temps. But quite frankly, if you buy, a nice jacket, don't go cheap on your jacket. Buy a nice warm jacket, gloves and a hat. And unless you're prolonged standing outside for, hours on end, you can get from your house to your car and you're not going to be that cold. We have furnaces here. You could buy a house with a fireplace. Like, it's not that bad. But keep in mind, the winters are cold here. They just are. So that wraps up my 5 pros and 5 cons of living in Des Moines / Iowa. And you know what? Like, all in all, you get what you get. There are pros and cons, as I said, in any state. So if you are considering moving to Des Moines, reach out to me. I would love to be your boots on the ground, give you an idea of, what is it like to live here? What neighborhoods should you look at? I can do video walkthroughs. I can, give you statistics, send you some websites on best school systems, crime reports, and whether it's the suburbs or it's Des Moines proper, like, let me know. I would love to make sure that you're not driving too far for work. Your kids can find daycare. You're able to do your do whatever events, whatever hobbies you have. Whether it's golf, whether it's biking, whether it's going to parks with your kids, whether it's hiking. Like, we can find that stuff. We can help you do it, and we can make sure that, you're finding a place that you really want to call home. So if any of that interests you, shoot me a message, shoot me a text. Information is below. Love to help out. I think it'd be a lot of fun to help out. And, quite frankly, we're helping people every day. We have people call in and we help them, do all of the things that I have mentioned and make sure you're not wasting your money buying a house in a neighborhood, in an area, in a location that you don't like. Again, my name is Darson Grantham. I'm a realtor, real estate agent with Keller Williams. And if you are interested in Des Moines, stay on this channel. We have more to come. Peace.